Hey, so you saw my little false start like earlier at the beginning of live. Like I just tried something new and put your face in the background, and I realized that it wasn't gonna go away once you started, and I was like, this might get kind of awkward. Look, it's a little weird. So let me redo this so that it won't be that kind of a little weird. You're like, what is this guy doing? Like, why is this guy like using my face as a background?
It's like,
y'all, shout out to.
Oh god, no, but it's cool.
I was just trying something new.
So many different features on here. I mean, they're really Insta is really stepping up their game, I think.
Oh, really? Yeah, no doubt. Definitely, they definitely are stepping up their game. But look, I'm so dope. I'm so happy to have you here. It's so dope to have you here. I'm not trying to start off the interview complimenting myself, but I just want to tell you that since I have connected with you on social media, since I've seen you doing your thing, you have nothing but positive energy, and I'm so happy to have you here on STEMedia Live. And so what we're gonna do, right? What we're gonna do? Shout out to everybody on the live. We're gonna ask you our first question, and that is, give us a random fun fact about yourself. We always kick things off that way. We've had Kelly on here who's told us different things about her. We've had a lot of people. We have Keelan, shout out to STEM the War. We had a lot of different people tell us, but I'm really interested in give us a little fun fact about yourself, Shizrae.
So I think an exciting thing that is, I love learning languages, which is something that's always been, I guess it's part of the whole traveling thing and growing up with like a different background. But my fun fact would be I speak 5 languages.
5 languages.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that is definitely something that not everybody can say. What are the 5 languages? What are the 5 languages?
My friends are like, that's overkill, Shiz. And I'm like, I don't.
What are they?
I speak French. Like I learned that, and then Arabic, the formal, and I speak Urdu because I'm Pakistani, and that's the language of Pakistan.
Okay.
And then Hindi, I just picked up learning it, and you get incorporated in English. So my 5 languages.
Awesome. Y'all give some hearts and some love for that. Any other multilingual people in the community? Shout out to Teresa. That's cool.
Yes.
A lot of people are digging that. I think that's pretty dope. Yeah. Yep. Awesome. So your family, I know. So where are you born and raised, and then your family? What's your family background? Give us a little bit more about that.
So I was born in Karachi in Pakistan, but my dad was already. I mean, he grew up in Houston, like he was here. So we moved to Houston when I was like 5-6 years old, and Houston's pretty much been my hometown, H-Town all the way.
H-Town all the way, okay. Yeah.
So this is where I grew up, but I do visit. I go back as much as I can. I'm glad that my parents kind of let me have that balance, and I think that really helped shape a lot of my life too. Having a good balance to be able to go back and like sticking to my roots in a way. So I appreciate it,
Well, you got like, it's awesome. You have the Pakistani culture that's a part of you. And then like Texas and Houston has its own like subculture really as it relates to the United States.
Yes. And the funny part is like my whole life, everyone's always thought of me as being Hispanic. So they will just start speaking to me in Spanish. They will, just assume. And if I look at them like, I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like, I'll pick up a little, like living in Houston, and my best friend is Mexican, and she speaks Spanish like here and there. But like just picking up on little things, I'll try to reply, or I'll have an idea of what they're saying. And then they'll always just, assume to be, and I feel like one of my friends, she was like, Shizrae, you're so like culturally ambiguous. Like you can just, and I feel like a lot of people are like that. Like you can't really tell where they're from, so you just kind of assume like, oh, you must be like Latino, and I'm like,
Well, I think it's awesome. You being a person who speaks a lot of language, I think it's awesome to be able to be culturally competent in a way that like you are able to work with and get along with people from various backgrounds.
Exactly. I always think of it as a positive thing. I mean, you being able to communicate with them, because learning a language opens up so many doors to like how much can you learn about, you know, where they're from, their background, their customs, all of that really comes into play too. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's a great thing to have.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, if you're just joining us, everybody watching this is STEMedia Live. My guest Shizrae is here. She came up in Houston, Texas. That's where she's joining us from right now. Family background based in Pakistan. And tell me something, Shizrae. Like, pronounce your last name for me. I'm just really curious about that. Give me a little bit about, you know, the origins of the last name, and if there's any more to share on that.
I think it's a pretty common like surname. Iqbal is how we pronounce it.
Iqbal, okay.
Yes, Iqbal, Shizrae Iqbal. And then my first name is not a common Pakistani name though. Like, I don't know where my mom, like, it's actually Persian. So that was something that my family did. But there, I have yet to meet another Shizrae, and I'm like, Molly, what did you do? You know, but.
Well, it's unique. It's unique, you know? Yeah. I think when I was younger, I used to want to have like a common name. Like, I was like, well, my name can't be Michael. Like, my name is Nehemiah. I was like, well, my name can be Michael, or like.
And you see your name on those little like keychains.
Yeah.
So sad, and I was like, I don't understand why. Like, the last thing they would put on there is my name.
I feel your pain. Exactly. Shout out to people with with the names that they don't see on the Coke bottles, you know. Shout out to people who do have names on there. It's all love for you as well. But, you know, I think it's nice. Jennifer says, she said, I love your first name. Yeah. So definitely. So you are a engineer.
Yeah.
Shout out to the engineer. She is an engineer. But obviously you didn't just jump right into the career field. There was an educational path. There was a journey that led you to that path. So I'm curious. Let's talk about kind of the origin stories. How did you first get into engineering? Was it in Houston, you know, with the space program? Like, what was some of the early introductions to the world of STEM for Shizrae?
So the high school that I went to was actually for, like, the academy was for global studies. I went to Clements here. And in there, like, it's a very competitive school. And I just realized, like, I was in debate. I was in everything. Like, you could, all the honor societies, all the clubs, doing the most. And I realized, you know, when I was in those classes, like physics and all my math classes I was like a year ahead in calc and stuff. And those just came to me a little bit, like, I wouldn't say easier, but I feel like I understood the concepts with better clarity than some of my peers did. And I was like, maybe this is something that I'm connecting with a little bit more. Like, I was excited to go to physics when none of my friends were, and I was like, I don't know if there's like something wrong with me or maybe a calling. And then I started getting more into the, you know, the science side and just being more curious about those kinds of things. And that's when I realized, like, okay, I really like this. And when I would tell my dad, I wanted to actually be a lawyer because I was in debate, and I was very involved in debate. I seemed to be pretty good at it. I made it to like nationals and stuff. Now I wanted to pursue law for a while. And this wasn't up until like my junior year that I actually decided to go into engineering. And I feel like a lot of people, you know, have this idea that they need to be born knowing what they want to do. And I was like panicking because I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I feel like this is something that fits me. This is something I like, and I'm interested in it. So my dad had an engineering background. My uncle did, and like, there are people I look up to, you know, and a lot of the people in my community were like, okay, med school, doctors, or right. I feel like medical school,
prestigious careers. Yeah.
Like, and I was like, I don't know if that's the one for me. So I actually started because Houston is the hub of oil and gas in North America, at least.
Totally, yeah.
Oil and gas capital. I would see, like, just, you know, all the Schlumberger, the company that I work with, their headquarters is right, like, 10 minutes away from my house. So I would always see them on my way to school. I would see, like, Floor. I would see all these different places that have their headquarters here. And I think, like, it's just seeing those, I was like, okay, maybe I want to go into oil and gas. So I actually started with petroleum engineering. that's what I was like, okay, my dad convinced me. He's like,
Was that in college? Like you told when you first started out in college?
yeah. So when I
Okay.
graduated high school and like I got in for petroleum, and I stuck in it. I did it for 2 years, and I realized like this is very theoretical, very like it wasn't that I was failing. I feel like people just have this idea like, oh, if you change something, like it's because you're bad at it. I just felt like it
Right.
wasn't fitting well with me. Like I was like, this is not what I expected. Like maybe I didn't like, because I feel like there's this disconnect with what people perceive engineering to be.
Right. Right.
Maybe that's something that
Well, let me
like,
before you get there. Shizrae, let me ask you this though, because you talk about the disconnect, and you obviously had like an original desire to be like these prestigious careers of like a doctor and a lawyer, which I know is like particularly for immigrant families. I've always heard how it's like
very,
those are like on the pedestal, yeah, and then like the next tier is like engineers, kind of like the right next tier. I'm curious though, did you ever have, when you talk about perceptions, people challenge you when it came to your ability as a woman to go into these fields? Like, was it ever like, okay, yeah, you can be an engineer, or you can maybe be a doctor, but engineer, did you run into any of that prior to this?
yes, and the worst, I think something that really used to hurt me, and I wouldn't, it would make me feel sad, but behind the doors, I wouldn't ever like express it, was
Yeah.
was the fact that people in my community would really just be like, hey, I don't like engineering, it's kind of for men, like, you
Wow.
sure you want to do that?
Yeah.
Are you sure this is something that like you're interested in? And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty good at the, math and science and stuff. And I would
Right.
always just see like a lot of my guy friends would also, I mean, from whatever culture, whatever background, just in general, It was like the friendship turned into competition as soon as they saw me like in high school, like getting good grades and things like that. It was like they would have this like competitiveness with me, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, like you're doing good in here, like
Yeah. It's like don't let the girl do better than me. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I
So
hear you.
there was a little bit of that too, and for me it was always like, I'm gonna either lose some friendships, or just I felt like I couldn't be as expressive. Like if I won something, if I was making it in the honor society or became president or something, I would have to downplay my accomplishments to make the other
Right.
people feel better. And
Yeah.
that's something I used to do a lot of all the time. And I used to come back and I was like, that's not fair to me. Like I would come to my mom
Yeah.
and be like, Mom, like, if so-and-so's son was going here or getting into, like I was in DECA, which was this business marketing organization in high school. And we had like our international competition was in California. It was like a 1 week paid trip, get to go everywhere. It's fun and exciting. And I'm like, this is exciting. I'm excited. I made it. I worked hard for this. I got here. And I had to downplay that whole thing. And it was my senior year, that whole trip, for the people in like our community, because they were just like, oh, like, isn't Shiz kind of, like, are you doing a little
Overachiever. You don't want to feel like an overachiever. Yeah.
I was like,
That is a big thing. Yeah. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and that's what it's just like. Why is that? Like, I feel like there needs to be a conversation that people need to have. Like, it's okay for women to be excelling in things, and they shouldn't have to feel like they need to downplay their accomplishments for a lot of these men to feel like they can approach them. Like a lot of intimidation would happen, and I'm like, that's not a culture that I ever appreciated being heavy. So it's hard, like being a woman in STEM. But like for me, my mom was like, don't give up. She was like, phase it out. My dad would be like, he was never, telling me not to do anything. He was like, go for it. I mean, I have 2 younger brothers, and I don't have a sister, so he would literally. She does everything.
So Shizrae, everybody. We froze up just a tad bit, Shizrae. So you mentioned how you had 2 younger brothers. So I'm assuming that they looked up to you as well. Like in their eyes, it was like, yo, big sister, were y'all close? Like, were they like, yo,
We
big
are
sister,
really
she can.
close. I'm
Okay.
like I think my youngest brother, I pretty much raised him, so he's like my little baby.
Yeah.
And then the middle one, he's more of like my best friend. Like I can go to him for
Gotcha. Wow.
advice. I can like talk to him about whatever just is going on in life. Like if I feel sad, he'll pick up on these things. So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what the relationship is. They look up, but
Gotcha.
then I think they also get like, oh yeah, okay, shit.
you still like that because trying to tell them what to do, always you cast that huge shadow. Well, that's awesome, man. And I just think it's awesome that you had your mom and you had first of all, the confidence just to keep going because, we do think about the fact that there are sometimes people who say no to certain paths because of the support or the lack of support from people around them. But you continued on. You got into petroleum engineering, even though that's not where you stayed, but you got into the program that in Houston, at the University of Houston, where you were at first, right? Is that where you were?
Yes.
I'm assuming that was probably a competitive program to get in anyway, because, this is one of the higher paying engineers.
Being there, they heavily recruit. Being in Petro was a huge like accomplishment as well. And I was like, okay, this is everybody in there also has a very like mentality. They have that same mentality, like, hey, we made it. This like we got in. They weren't playing games. I just felt like when I was taking the courses, the material in those classes, I was like imagining myself in the future, like, hey, am I going to be doing this for the next like 20, 30 years? And I was like, I don't know if this is something I feel passionate about. It's just, and then that's when my dad, so in the middle of my college career, I switched into mechanical. So I actually graduated as a mechanical engineer, and I had like a minor in manufacturing systems. And that's what I ended up doing. But I still work in oil and gas. So
those are the jobs, right? Those are the jobs. Did you want to stay home though? Like, did you want to stay in Houston area, or did you? Because of course we're going to get to the Harvard part, but like, was it initially an effort to stay close to family, or was it like,
So for me, originally I had the one school that I was planning to go to was Cornell. It was all the way.
Okay.
And my mom was like, okay, you can go, like we're not stopping you. But then also I felt like a lot of people just think like, oh, you get into a great school and like you should, like, why'd you give it up? I got a lot of people like to have opinions on everything. So
you should do this. What you need to do is this. Yeah, I got you.
Like, hey, you should really go. I'm like, I know, but if I'm gonna go to a different college, because at that time I was doing petroleum, and I was like, okay, the industry is here in Houston, like I'm gonna come back here, and where am I gonna really get like the networking opportunities, all of those important things. So for me it was like, okay, I'm gonna stay in the Houston area because I had a full ride, and I was like, okay, my financial costs, I'm saving a lot, I'm close to home, things like that. And then on top of just the flying there, like I would be away from my family, and that was something that I did need to stay close to my family as well. Like at that time, I just felt like my mom we don't have a lot of family here, so my mom support and stuff.
Needs you close.
Exactly.
That comfort. Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, all right, I want to stay in this local area as well. And then just like looking at the pros and cons, like I wish I could say U of H was my first choice, but it wasn't, because I did, like, obviously you always have like this dream school that you want to go to.
Yeah.
And then for me, that became like Cornell, and I was like, oh, I so want to go there so badly, and I got in. But just looking at everything that comes with it, it's like, okay, where am I actually going to end up working? And then that was kind of the biggest thing. My dad was like, you're going to come back here to work in oil and gas, like, what companies are you looking at? Like, think long term. And so that's when I really made the decision. I was like, okay, Houston is where I'm going to be best, like, for my career, which is the reason I'm going to school. Like, I want to eventually get a job in these.
You have And
I feel like that's what a lot of people have to consider, right? Like, you can be the smartest and the brightest and get in, but I also have come across, like, throughout high school and college and working and here, like even in grad school, it's just meeting all these people. Like, I have some friends who've gone to like these top-notch universities. I mean, I'm talking Stanford, Georgetown, Columbia,
The
and
big names.
we're big names, right? Like everybody's dream places. And then where do you end back up? Or like I saw them also struggle finding the roles that they perhaps wanted just because of the resources. I'm not saying that like, I just feel like a lot of people have this idea that like if
This
you go
false,
to one
like
place,
imaginary, like
it's like
that's all I need.
is
Yeah,
gonna come true. And I
right,
feel
right.
like everything is, it's so it depends on what you need and what you want that
Yeah,
you have to take into consideration, because the
yeah,
opportunities offered are different by university, by like geographic location, by the
right.
networks that those universities have. Like
Right, right.
for
And even your own even your own like unique context. Like you talked about your
exactly.
family and getting close to them. And that's really important because coming from you, right? Like a lot of us, if people who are watching this, shout out to y'all watching this, appreciate you. A lot of us sometimes can get caught up in, again, like the imaginary image of if I work for this company, even, or if I'm able to go to the school, if I can live in this city, like then everything's gonna be great. But that's not necessarily true. And as we look at you, even I have in the pinned comment that you are currently a Harvard grad student, but for you to also say that, like, it's not always necessarily about
Yeah,
you getting that big name. It's about ultimately what you're trying to achieve and where you're going to end up, and looking
exactly.
at the long term goal. I think is very powerful.
And another huge thing that I learned, sort of, I wanted to, in college, I was like dead set. I was like, my parents put in so much to raise me here, and like, I work so hard, and like, you have this, I think a lot of, I hate to say this, but a lot of like children of immigrants have this kind of pressure, right? Like
Yeah,
that they
yeah,
want to excel because they want to like make all the sacrifices, the hardships you paid for, and
worth
they
it.
really want to
Yeah.
strive to be good because you have that amidst yourself as well. Like, oh, I got to do good. I have to do good because, like, you got to stand up on your own feet or whatever it may be.
Right, right.
And I definitely had that. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I mean, it's a great, it drove me to get to where I am. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful for it. The mentality, like, keep going, keep going, keep going is great. But you also have to know that it can't overcome you because it can become very like strenuous.
Hindering. Yeah, yeah. It actually can hinder from your success after a while.
Exactly. So you
Yeah,
have
the
to know
anxiety.
your
Yeah.
limits, and you have to
Right,
figure that stuff out. But
right.
when I was working in, I work in West Texas, so it's like the field when I refer to it's West Texas, out of
Okay.
Midland and the Permian Basin.
I know that area. Yeah.
So that, like, when I was in the field, the one thing that I really learned was I got to Schlumberger. I got to the company that I wanted. Like, I wanted to work for Schlumberger for so long. This was like
Yeah.
one of the, top tier companies for me.
Oil and
And
gas
I get
company.
it.
Yeah.
And I'm like on the moon. I'm like, wow, I made it. I didn't have a handout. I didn't have anybody, that I knew in the company. It was just hard work. Like, I started orgs in my college career. I did like networking. I mean, you name it, and I was doing it. And when finally I was like, oh, this is like the fruit of my labor, or whatever, that cliche saying is. And I'm like, okay, I got this. I made it. And being there, I don't know why. I was like, I'm giving up. Like, being a field engineer is I love it. I love the job, but you give up a lot too, because being in the
A
field,
lot of travel.
yes. So like in the field, your schedule is you work for 2 weeks and you're off for a week. And I pretty much was like, I was working 14 to 16 hours a day. Sometimes
Wow.
it could be a little longer. And I went in, I'm a supervisor for fracking and wireline operations. I'm sorry to the people who are against fracking on here, but that's
Hey, we're not judging you. We want to hear your job.
They're like,
We won't get into all that. Yeah.
that's a whole other conversation.
A whole other conversation. Yeah. Go ahead.
That's what I did. And on there, like, when I get into the field, the crews that I was working, the people that I'm working with, they've been in oil and gas for, like, some of these, people have been there that for family, this is like their family business. They've grown up in the
Decades.
and then you come in because you have a college education and you get hired by these, top companies. You come in, and after like a year of being on the ground, and I got promoted to being a supervisor, there was a lot of my crew always, like, they were my best friends. They are my best friends. Like, I can, support was there, but there's also a lot of older gentlemen who are like
you think you,
first of all,
who you think you are? Exactly. I know, like, and you're young.
Like, I was 22, 23.
Oh man. Yeah.
It's like, I'm not taking orders from you. Like,
right.
That mentality. And I'm like, but technically I am the supervisor, and something screws up on location, it's not you. It's not you. Like, no matter, I understand you've been here for like X amount of years, but it's my name that they're gonna, my manager, like, I'm the one that has to answer.
Yeah.
And finding that balance on how to be assertive at my age, because I'm not tall, I'm 5'3", I'm not like some overpowering
over everybody.
In the field it's like these big gigantic men.
Yeah.
So there's
who do know a lot about their, to be fair, they do know a lot about their craft.
Yes.
But nevertheless, you have a
and I wouldn't have become like to the point that I was unless it was for all these people that were teaching me, and I always respected them. Like, the age thing, like, for me, I think it's a cultural thing as well, that my parents to me, like, they're older than you, I don't care what they do, you are gonna respect and for me that's what it was. I was like, it doesn't matter, like, I respect you, like, because you're older than me and you worked in this is not, I'm just joining. I'm just coming into the industry, like the title. But sometimes when you have like a technical issue, and then that's when, like, I guess a power play of sort, like, it's very fine lines.
I know what you mean.
These things come up, and like that's when you have to know how to navigate through like friendships and being a student of the people that you have been working with, along with being their supervisor. And the role, it was a lot of imposter syndrome, I think.
Yeah.
That comes up, and that is something that I definitely had to like work with as well. So
I'm glad you said that. That's really important, y'all. This is Shizrae. She is a field engineer in the oil and gas industry. She's also a Harvard grad student, and you're talking about something really relevant, Shizrae. And is, here you are, a young person with a degree coming out into the field. You're also a woman, and you're working in a way that where, from a technical standpoint, you do technically rate higher than some of the people that are older than you and even have more years of experience than you. And so you're right.
Experience, like, they have, I mean, the amount of years I've been alive is how much experience these people have.
They have, right. Yeah. And then you add on the fact too, which I love that you brought up, is there is imposter syndrome. Because sometimes, like, we can begin to start thinking about, do I even belong out here? Like, even within ourselves. Yeah. So how do you, there's a quote that says this, I think it's an African proverb that says, when there is no enemy within, the enemy without can do no harm. And so oftentimes that inner enemy sometimes is the biggest fight, right? So how did you deal with that? So
that's something I still deal with, but it's in a different role. Like, that's with Harvard now. I feel like, when I got the label of Schlumberger, when I got the label of engineer, I really worked for it. And I worked at Siemens as an intern, and I was doing design engineering. And I did that, and that was an industry I could have gone into, like mechanical base, and then coming into oil and gas, where I didn't have, I studied oil and gas for a little while when I was doing petroleum, and I took some courses, and I like interned with a few companies, but I didn't have that formal education for it, and I definitely didn't have like the years of experience out in the field. So for me coming in, just having to learn from the scratch, I'm from ground up. Like, Schlumberger put me through training and everything, and then you're in school again when you get hired by these companies. So you learn. You literally are learning the oil field. You're learning operations. You're learning what is fracking, what is wireline, what is. I was in charge of explosives, right? Like, I'm dealing with heavy explosives that we send down into the earth, and we perforate them at different like depths, and then you do fracking to get out the oil. And doing all of this, learning all of this, being in charge of all of this, like making the calls and decisions on what you need to do to preserve safety for people. You need to like keep the company's name. You need to think about profitability. You need to think about
profitability. Yes.
Downturn. I mean, everything.
I
would just sit there and I was like, I can't. Like, I would be taking it in, and on the field it's go, go, go. You have to make, I mean, if something is messing up, you have a well exploding, or you have like frac sand backing. I mean, anything.
Or you have money loss, or you have
like tool string. I mean, it's just so many things.
Wow.
To think on the spot, and at those points, I'm just like, that's when the real imposter syndrome kicks in, because everybody's looking at you to make the decision, right? Like, what this is how you handle something is what people are gonna remember, I think.
Right.
And for me, it was always like, I can't over psych myself out. So I do that. I get anxiety, like, you know, I would just be like, okay, like, what am I doing? So for me, it was like, what did I learn? What have I seen? What have I been told by people? And then I would also bounce ideas off of, I'm so big on asking for help. Like, you know, if I don't know something, I'll be like, give me a second, and I'm going to talk to my crew. I'm going to talk to whoever I need to, and then I'll make a decision and get back. So I think the imposter syndrome, like, people are going to feel it until you feel like you have enough knowledge to really play your role. You know, it's like when you enter something, for me, that's how it worked. I was like, until I felt like I had enough confidence in myself that, like, hey, this title that I am, whatever it is, engineer or supervisor or Harvard grad student or whatever, you know, like, until I felt like I earned that title for myself, I felt like I had the imposter syndrome. And for me, it was just like, okay, I need to get myself educated enough. I need to get myself comfortable enough to feel like this is who I am.
I belong here. I belong here. Yeah. No, I think that's interesting because, you know, it's not like you belong any less than anyone else, right? If there was a guy, you know, if a white guy graduated and had that same title, he isn't any more qualified than you are by nature of that. But what I'm hearing from you is that also sometimes when we feel that, we can use it as sort of a drive to become even more competent and become even more proficient in the knowledge of what we're doing, right? So it's not a comfortable feeling all the time, but you can kind of channel that into, all right, let me make sure I really do know myself. Let me make sure I really get on top of my game.
Like, if you're gonna talk the talk, you gotta walk the walk, right? Like, back it up. So for me, it's like, okay, I'm gonna always have people who are gonna be like, oh, you're a supervisor, like, are you sure? Or some people are really supportive and they're like, yes, we need women out here, because they love it, because they're like, you guys are quick thinkers, like, you guys can look, you're very detail oriented. A lot of the females in the field that I've come across are super detail oriented, and they care about the human side of things as well, because I guess it's easier for women to be in tune with the emotions. You know, it's not saying that, like, in general, like, I've enough guys that are in tune with emotions too, but like it's less common for me, for sure, you know, to find men who are like willing to be empathetic, I think. So,
I feel you, man. I think that's so true. That intuition is so much stronger. I know in my wife for sure than myself.
Was for me when I started in the field, like, and I just got done with my 3 months of Schlumberger's like training school, and it's the first thing you do. I went to Midland for the first time. I'd never even seen the field. I mean, I live in Texas, but it's 9 hours in the middle of the Panhandle area, like in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, where am I? The airport for Midland is like the size of, you know, my like neighborhood street. I'm like, this is so small. Like, where am I? Like, coming from such a big city like Houston, you go into the middle of nowhere. And I had 2 managers for our department. And at that time, they were both female. And I was
Oh,
like, wow, like Schlumberger,
yeah.
like I'm here at Schlumberger. I'm here in
Shout out to
the
Slumberjay.
Permian, you know, and they the Permian is like, it's one of the hot spots for fracking. It's probably like the biggest basin that we have in North America, at least for fracking. It's like very active, and I'm like, wow, they're two women leading the show. I don't know
Yeah.
why that made me so excited. And like, you know, they moved on to different, like they moved on even higher to different roles. But I remember like seeing them there. I was like, okay, because with me there was only like two other girls, but having that comfort, like they're killing it. Like they're doing,
I love it. Yeah,
you know,
they're doing it. I can do it. We in here. We in here.
exactly.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was so surprised. I was like, wow, there's like, okay, like I can do this. I can figure it out. And
Right,
I was able to talk to them, you know, and then there's just so many different people that you get to meet over time.
right.
But I think like finding at least one person you can relate to, and sometimes you won't
Relate
find
to.
that, but
Right.
just knowing that there's others out there, and like, I mean, they were not the same as me. They
Right,
had their
right.
own stories and struggles, but just seeing like, hey, a woman, I can relate to her on just that
Yes.
level, like
That alone. That alone.
it
Yeah.
gave me hope, you know.
Yes.
I can do this.
And you're giving people hope too, like your presence, us, you know, doing the STEMedia live. Shout out to people watching this on YouTube. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be replayed on YouTube. Shiz, people can come across this in their search. Like you're giving people hope as well, literally as we speak. And so it's so awesome to hear your story about how these women also gave you a lot of encouragement. Shout out to everybody watching this. If you have any questions for her in the field, Manny Talks, my friend Manny. He's another great person with a great podcast. You all need to check out. Yeah, but we're gonna get into your Harvard experience. And if y'all are watching this and you have a question for Shizrae as it relates to working as a field engineer in oil and gas or as a Harvard grad student, which we're about to talk about, go ahead and type it in the comments. But we definitely want to get to the Harvard experience. Like, where are you now in the experience? What are you pursuing? What made you even think? And I don't mean this. I mean this like honestly, no like disrespectful way, but like literally, what made Shizrae feel like she could go into Harvard for grad school? Like, talk about all that.
What was it? That is like one of the questions I get. So they're like, why did they? I've actually had people just straight up ask me like, why did they accept you? And I'm like,
Oh man,
okay, but
what are you trying to say? Yeah,
like in this way, like what, you know, because they're my friends and they're like, Shiz, like you do good stuff, but like, wow, like I didn't think you were like that gonna be up there. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what happened, but I think you know, so I'm doing my master's in management at Harvard right now, and I got in 2018 actually. So I
Okay.
had to defer it because of work, because in the field I
Right.
tried and it just is not possible to take a class, because like not every day would I even have cell service. I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and then I couldn't study with like working 14 hours a day. It's not possible.
It's a lot, yeah.
I started like in this pandemic, because I kept pushing it off. I was like trying to balance it, and I needed to take time off of work. So this was something that I had planned like within the last year anyways, to take this fall and go about. But then with everything, like the market going down, I was like, I am going to be on like furlough. This is, with
time.
everything happening, I was like, I'm not going to just sit around and not do anything. Like, I need to make a decision. So my
Right.
dad literally was like, you have 3 days. You have 3 days to cry, mope, whatever you need to do. And then you're going to make a
Your dad's about
decision and
business.
you're going to get back on your feet. And I'm like,
Oh man.
okay. So my dad told me that, and I needed that, because I'm someone that's like, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And he's like, you
Yeah.
have to make a decision to start school or not. Like,
Yes.
do you want to do this or not? And then, so I was like, Harvard has been my dream forever, but, I don't know, like I love my career as well, and I've made really good progress at it. Now, I think this is something that a lot of people might not think about until they're in this situation, but like, I was trying to explain it to one of my friends the other day. they're like, why is Harvard such a like, why didn't you pursue it like automatically? Like it's Harvard, right? And I'm like, yeah,
Right.
but dude, like you go to school to get a job, right? Like eventually you want to, for me, it was more like having the financial means, right? It's eventually like to support myself, build that stability.
Right.
That's why I went to engineering. And that was one of the driving forces for me. It's like, hey, it's going to give me a secured future. Like I can go get my back.
You have a special set of skills that are highly valued in the marketplace. Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like with that, you know, also comes in the fact that like when I was at work, I was making decent money, more money than I could have imagined. And I was like, all right, this is a great career for me. Like I'm understanding it. I'm finally getting good at it. I've been promoted enough on it. Like, you know, I started out as like a trainee. I broke up to like supervisor, you know, and you just keep doing your promotion.
Keep going. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm like, I'm really being successful here. And this is a company that I know is going to pull me through. So with my role being a field engineer, it's like you are in the field for like 3 to 5 years, the engineering route, and then you can come into the office if you want after you have like a grade 11 promotion, and you can work in like management side and things like that, more in office roles that you request. So my game plan was like, okay, I can push it off, but Harvard wouldn't have that. They were like, you
coming or not? Yeah. Harvard's like, you coming or not?
It's like, you can defer for a year.
Yeah.
The second you have to petition for. And then I was like, okay, now I really got to go. So I took my classes. I took a summer semester because I was like, this is right in time. I literally signed up like 2 weeks before the course started. And I was really excited. I got an A.
Hey, she got a hey. Y'all give her some hearts if y'all watching this on Instagram. Give her some hearts. If you on YouTube,
I was like, oh,
this is a good point to give a like. So you got an A. And was it hard though? Like here's the thing. Like we think Harvard, we're like whoa, Harvard. Like them professors, you probably getting taught about like. Was it hard?
It is. I'm not gonna say it's not because it's a lot more critical thinking. Like. Okay. It is so dive deep, and doing a master's level on, I have no business educational background. Like I didn't do, so the MBA part, it's like, okay, you're not learning like business 101 as soon as you get in. They expect you to have a certain acumen or understanding, and they really ask us to pull on our professional experience, on our like work experience, on what have you worked.
Case studies, practical knowledge from the field.
Everyone is out there with different backgrounds to come in. I mean, people they're thriving in all industries, all fields across the board. I mean, we have doctors, we have lawyers, we have people who've just done like a bachelor's in finance or something. People who have like NGOs, startups. They're like super, you know, renewable people. There's people in oil and gas, all the different backgrounds in there, and they really ask you to dive in on that. So one thing for me that really scared me in this class, I was like getting into it. I mean, it was a real thing. I was like, if I pursue this, first, can I even like, do I remember how to study? It's been a while. Like, you know, you have to find...
Lost your groove, maybe your study groove. Exactly. Shout out to people going back to school.
And you have to, like, push yourself again to do it. And that was hard for me. It was really hard. And then writing, oh, my God. In the field, I'm sorry for this, but the language you have working in the oil field, I'm just going to say it's very, like, colorful. Okay.
It doesn't lend itself for academic publication as well.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
Very colorful language. People are
colorful language.
You know, just you get to the point. There's no business letters sent out into the oil field. No.
Gotcha.
You just that stuff. People are like, okay, what? You know, it's looked funnily upon. And at Harvard, obviously, this is top business school. Here, you had the language, the jargon that they use. My professors were using in the first week. I was like, what?
like what are you saying, sir? Like, get to the point. Yeah.
And I'm just
Well, it's gonna make you war around. Yeah, I guess it's making you like
and
ambidextrous, so to speak.
I thought that was something that I was panicking about, but now
Yeah.
that the class ended, I just got my grade last week on it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the notes that my professor said on there, he was like, Shizrae, the ability for you to be able to say your point in like the most concise way, because we had to come up with a business proposal, different kind of business writings that we had to turn in, and it's heavy on doing case studies, heavy on writing, heavy on research, and all of this is very different from engineering, right? Like there's no quick like study problems I can do. It's just a lot of thinking and spending genuine time on putting aside doing your master's. And I'm like, okay, I gotta read, I gotta learn, I gotta find the focus again. But it was like you can give the information so concisely. I was like, wow, I think this really came in from the field, because the field, I can't sit there and tell you a story about like everything and then get to the point.
You mean you can't do what we're doing right now? You can't do this?
Like, people would just be like, are you okay?
Like, this is STEMedia Live? What you talking about? Yeah, I got you.
So it's like for them, like, I mean, I remember I would take like one picture in the field and the guys would just be like, are you done, Shiz? Like, are you done being on the cover of Vogue? I'm like, I'm taking one picture from my Instagram.
Stop hating.
They're like, she's just too busy like modeling for Vogue here. I'm like, oh my God, no, that's like not what's happening.
Well, you know, like, here's the thing too, like, and this is why this is so cool. Like, you kind of give us a behind the scenes, and sometimes like on paper or on Instagram, whatever, like that snapshot can create an image in people's minds that doesn't include the ups and the downs of the experience. You know, never would have known like the challenge you have of working with someone who's like twice your age, but also trying to like, you know, share with them your particular expertise, or going to Harvard, put it on pause, you know, put it on pause for year after year. All this, right?
You have
so much, right?
Yeah, you have to balance and like take into consideration what's important to you and what they're seeing and what you're going through. It's completely different things.
Yes. And all that doesn't necessarily come up in a highlight reel, right? But nevertheless, there are highlights. And I think it's cool that you have moments when you're able to say, look, man, you know, I graduated. I went and got a business degree from Harvard, like Harvard Business School. I mean, we're talking about the Harvard Business Review, and it's nothing wrong with. In fact, I even believe that you have what it takes to one day have a case study inside of the Harvard Business Review, you know, picking it up, like, oh man, Shizrae, she was on STEMedia Live one day, I remember, you know, and all that, you know. So I think it's really cool that you have begun this path. You've already started off on a good foot with an A in your first class at Harvard. You have this experience again as a young person, as a young woman, in the field engineering role, and management and business and success in this industry is definitely in your future. I can already tell, y'all.
I think, you know, the biggest thing, it's like you have to be able to be adaptable to the different roles life is going to throw at you. Because people are always like, how did you figure out you wanted to do business school? And I was like, well, I always saw myself in like roles of like leadership. I like that. I sought up for it. And it feels weird. I feel like even saying that right now, I'm like, I don't know how people are going to take it. But I think everybody has like, okay, like I know I can be a good leader. I'm good with looking at a lot of problems, telling, you know, strategizing like, hey, this is how we're going to approach things. That's why I like engineering as well, because you see a problem and you can approach it in different ways. So I think like for me, that came like, I want to work eventually my way up to management. And then that's when I started like looking at my different routes and options, and ended up at Harvard pursuing this master's, which I'm so grateful for. And here I'm learning like there's so much to learn. There's still so much to learn. And
you're learning that there's more to learn. I love it.
You will never stop learning. But I think the best thing you can do is like be adaptable, right? Like you have to. I went from being top of my class, you start over again, like even in just normal everybody's life plan, right? Like if you go to high school, you start as a freshman, you're gonna graduate top dog senior, and the next year you're in college or you're starting to work, you're back on square one, dude. Like you're off that high horse and you're going to have to build up. So for me, it's like, don't get fixated on where you're at. Don't get fixated on the title of being a supervisor, being this. I always, people are like, oh, Shiz, like, for me, I felt like people would just say like, oh, you went to Harvard? Like, what are you doing there? How did you? What is happening? But for me, it's like, I'm still starting it.
It's still,
and, you know, I'm
it's part of the journey.
Yeah, I'm starting my journey there. I'm learning it. And, you know, I will, like, I love being able to, I've met so many great people recently since I started, like, being more expressive about, like, STEM and the community and trying to be a part of it more, like this, right? So I think that I've been able to meet some amazing people who've reached out and they're like, hey, I have this. And I was like, dude, I was in the same boat as you. Like, literally, like 2 years ago, I was where you were. And I think it's so great to be able to see so many girls reach out and they're like, wow, Shiz, like, I can't believe, like, you're doing this, especially, like, being a Pakistani girl, you know, with the cultural stigmas. Then you have stigmas of being just a female in these kinds of different fields. So I feel like, you know, just knowing how to navigate through life and being able to be adaptable is, like, the biggest thing I can tell people, because that's what it is. You know, for me, it was always like, work hard, you know?
Right. Yeah. Well, listen, I think that you have given us a lot of, there's a lot to think about, especially when you just ended with work hard too, because obviously you didn't get where you are without working hard, on top of, you know, the interest, on top of the opportunities, you had to put in the work. And before Instagram get ready to shut us off, you know, this has been one of those fast ones. Go ahead and share with us a little bit about how people can keep up with you. And then also, like, again, you already talked about your career goals, but like, what can we expect as you become more and more involved in this STEM community from Shizrae? Before ultimately, this is a loaded question. How can we stay in touch with you? What can we expect from Shizrae? And then give us some parting words of wisdom too before we say goodbye.
Definitely. So for me, you guys can always reach out to me on my Instagram. It's Shizrae Iqbal. You know, DM me. I try to go through them. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I have a lot of people reaching out to me on LinkedIn, and I try to get through to them. For
LinkedIn is popping. We thought about that, by the way. LinkedIn is starting to pop right now.
LinkedIn is popping for me. That's where it's at.
My LinkedIn popping. Yeah.
So it's you know, definitely reach out to me if you have any questions. I love being able to learn and network. That's my favorite thing, and I learn from everybody else as much as you know I can help. And then things that I really hope, you know, in the next year or two, I'll be graduating, hopefully from Harvard with my master's. And then, but with that, I really want to be a part of the change that's coming in the STEM community, that's happening now. You're doing that. I've, you know, seen the other accounts, like we were talking about earlier, like the Engineering Gals and Girl Genius Mag, and like Women Who Tech, Women Who Engineer. There's these great accounts out there. And the whole social, like, change that they have, I love it. I wish I was able to have it when I was growing up, because, you know, being the only one, like, who is kind of like me, I didn't find a lot of people I could relate to until I was in my later years of being more active in the STEM community. I've always tutored and stuff, so for me, just helping, you know, hopefully I can do more of these kinds of interactions. And then something to start with quickly, I guess it's a religious thing, but it's applicable to everybody. And I always tell myself that, because no matter how hard times get, like, you have to know that you're gonna pick yourself up and you're gonna be okay.